Hello. In the previous video, I explored how to read Lee Friedlander's images and how his layering techniques are addressing some of the dominant considerations related to art and art culture. His work was misunderstood in a number of ways. Initially, the reaction was that his photographs were too random and basically unconstructed. Then the art world felt that he couldn't really be a serious artist because of his habit to include humor in his work. Later, he was accused of producing work that was too cerebral and intentionally obscure. He isn't prepared to intellectualize about his work. He's creating mental puzzles that emerge out of a deep engagement with photography and art generally. When he goes out to photograph, he isn't chasing an idea. He's interested in discovering situations that he can use to create photographs that wouldn't exist unless he applies his intellect to making a picture out of it.
They say that the camera never lies, but it can stretch the...
His life and photography are intertwined. He's driven to make pictures all of the time. He's now 89 years old, and he said that the longest he's gone without shooting was the 3 months that it took him to recover from a double knee replacement. When you walk into a photographic bookstore, you see all of his subject obsessions neatly laid out in individual books, his monuments, his signs and nudes. But his way of working was far more random. He would just go out and photograph to see what scenes would look like when he photographed them. It was only when he did a big edit of contact sheets that he saw that he had been busy building collections of a number of individual subjects. This random approach might not suit everyone. Some photographers need the discipline of a project structure to keep them on track. But it's interesting to consider that perhaps one's best work could come from an obsession with the medium, rather than focusing on a particular theme. Friedlander's work follows in the tradition of documentary photography that includes the like of Walker Evans and Dorothea Lange. He and others during the 60s and 70s were interested in redefining social landscape photography. Robert Frank's shift towards a more critical stance towards American society greatly influenced Friedlander. His approach is described as indifferent, but that doesn't mean that he was uninterested. It means that by applying his compositional devices to the frame, he was stepping back emotionally from the subject matter. I'm now going to take a look at various of his subject fascinations. Throughout, one remains aware of the photographer's presence. One exception might be when he's taking pictures of family and friends, especially his wife, Maria. In many of his images of her, the true emotions manage to break through the analytical overlay. Broadly speaking, Friedlander's work is referencing reflection, how the viewer reflects and reads his images from their own perspective. Then he expands the concept into his photographs. In this shot, the woman is walking past a shop and looking at her reflection. This then highlights the fact that we largely modify how we see ourselves through our own reflection. Friedlander's presence as the photographer adds another layer to the theme of modifying our self-image by including the reflection of how others see us. I can almost hear some of you groan that there's no way that he thought all of this through in the moment of taking the picture. And he agrees with you. He said that if one really knew what one was doing, why do it? It seems to me, if you had the answer, why ask the question? The thing is, there are so many questions. This reflection image is a double self-portrait. He's positioned himself outside an antique shop, and his dark shape dominates. But at his left shoulder is a reflection from an old mirror that was at the back of the store. He's playing with lots of elements, negative and positive space. Also, the man behind him gives the image a bit of a film noir feeling. Like he could be a shady law enforcement officer checking up on this degenerate artistic activity. The camera collapses all of these layers of information to produce what could only be described as a uniquely photographic fiction. His self-portraits are often linked to his reflections. He uses his body or shadow as an element of the visual compositions. Unlike the self-conscious and highly conceptual self-portraits of, say, Cindy Sherman, Friedlander approaches the genre in a very raw manner. Here, for instance, he's confusing the hierarchy within the frame by positioning an illuminated light bulb between himself and the viewer. We're not sure what he's trying to say. With most of his self-portraits, Friedlander's presence is either secondary or compromised by other elements in the image. The shot shows some kind of street procession, which in my mind almost always land up having a slightly sad feel to them. The road scene could be in almost any small town in America, and no one's showing any interest in the drum majorette, but the interplay between the shadows is quite striking. It's almost as if Friedlander wants to save her from this disappointing experience. He allows himself to become part of the end joke. He doesn't see himself as above the ridicule of the human condition. This slightly creepy image is a form of self-portrait, but it says a lot about the predatory nature of street photography. The Monument series consists of work made from the 1960s through to 1975. The images show the monuments and statues and how they have become part of a complex visual and cultural environment. The statues mainly seem a forgotten presence, lonely and out of sync with the present-day busyness. In some cases, the structure is incidental to the composition, or even partially obscured. Monuments is a pretty dull subject for a photo essay. Friedlander agreed. He said that it was a pretty dumb subject and that he couldn't imagine how anyone would want to do that for 10 years. So the subject was obviously a coat hanger for him to play with and overlay his compositional experiments. At Mount Rushmore, the attraction is the distant faint reflection in the plate glass window of the visitors center. This image just says so much about tourism, the commercialization of the industry, and our limited ability to connect. He photographed the Iwo Jima Memorial in Arlington from a very uninteresting angle. He's not showing the famous triangular shape that the Marines and the flagpole make. The intensity of the moment seems out of place against the stumpy corporate skyline in the background. The white post in the foreground might mirror the flagpole, but combined with the white horizontal street line, it becomes the most dynamic visual element in the picture. America by Car documents Friedlander's many trips around the US. He's following in a trail laid down by many other photographers like Frank, but he gives this genre his own very original twist by using the car's structure to frame the familiar American landscape. Only once in the series, he steps out of his vehicle for a self-portrait. It's the last picture in the book, and he's wearing a not-so-subtle Lee t-shirt. Perhaps he's referencing the last image in Frank's The Americans. He also acknowledges Frank's influence in other ways. This photograph from The Americans is pointing out the 1950s conformity and societal obedience. Friedlander's version or update shows more confusion and disillusionment with the system. For more than 5 decades, Friedlander has been repeatedly drawn to the signs and billboards that litter the American landscape. The book becomes a portrait of modern life. The signs form a kind of found poetry, highlighting commerce and desire. You can see some of his compositions are ironic, and in others he reduces the lettering to shapes that take on abstract significance. In 1999, MoMA purchased 1,000 Friedlander images, making it their largest acquisition of work by a living photographer. And there were already 200 pictures by him in the collection. It's a real indicator of the high esteem in which the outworld now regards him. I'm not sure if you remember, but I mentioned in the first video that he only managed to sell one print during the New Documents exhibition at MoMA in 1967. I'm sure he and his family were pleased about the sale, but financial gain has never been his motivation. He is a man driven to take photographs and explore the potential of the photographic medium. I'm going to leave it there. I hope my voice, it's been a bit croaky post-flu, but thanks for watching and I'll see you next time. Cheers.